Hello. Welcome to Renaissance Leadership Odyssey podcast. I'm your host, Victor Vogel. Today, we're going to be talking about building trust through effective communication. So, it's going to be a pretty comprehensive overview of interpersonal communications as it relates to building trust. So, I hope you find that helpful. I hope you find that useful. These podcasts are meant to create a digital library so leaders can go back and find information that can help them be more effective as leaders, particularly as they journey into the next decade where things are going to be complicated, flexible, demanding, stressful, time constrained, whatever those are, issues that get in the way of us leading effectively. We need you to be able to cope with them, handle them, and effectively deal with them. These podcasts are aimed at providing that information. I have three different podcasts. One is called Renaissance Leadership Podcast. That's this one here, which I do monthly, and sometimes I do an additional one in the month, like I'm doing now. Uh, it's also, I have one that is a question and answer session that often comes from questions from my previous podcasts where I go more in depth on a particular topic area. One that relates to this podcast that you may want to go back and review. I did back in December of 2023, and it had to do with power and its impact on trust and building trust. So you'll see how that relates as we get into the discussion about power and trust. The so I have those three podcasts. In addition, I'd like for you to consider subscribing so that you know when these are available. You subscribe, go ahead and make sure you set up your notification. I think there's a bell you push or something. Uh, Now, relative to likes help me be positioned better to get this information out to leaders everywhere. I would like to do that. What I'm more interested in are your comments. I would love for you to put comments in that are both relative and edifying and help others to understand or grow more in leadership. Now, you can do that at the bottom of each of the podcasts that I do, but I also have a community on YouTube where you can leave those comments there. In addition to leaving that in comments, whether you like or don't like, if you disagree, that's fine. I'm open for you explaining your disagreements as long as you just don't put I disagree or I hate it or whatever. I would prefer something along the lines that are edifying for me, like I disagree because here's why, you back it up. Because a lot of times when I read those comments, I go, I wonder if I missed something. And I go back and I find out I have, and I end up changing my mind or my thought process. Even at this old age of 77 years old, I'm still doing that. So don't be afraid to do that either. I mean, but another thing you can do in the comments and also in the YouTube community is if you see something that is working for you, I mean, you go through this and it rings a bell about a time where this happened to you, and had you had this, it would have been better, or you did something that was similar to this and it worked out well, uh, or, you know, you have a problem and if you had this then it would work better, you think. All of those stories I would like for you to go ahead and try to put as much of the story into the comments section or the comments or the postings over on the community. I really am just building the community, so there's probably not anybody over there yet. But if you decide you see something in here and it strikes some sort of story that you remember, those stories are extremely helpful in getting this information out effectively to other people. Okay, so just some points that I thought I'd bring up here. I really appreciate you watching whatever portions of the video do. Uh, the best way to get the most out of these videos is to watch one all the way through. Don't take notes, don't do anything, just watch it all the way through. Most of them are fairly long, but they're packed full of a lot of information. And so going through it once, just orient your mind to it. Then go away, leave it alone for a couple of weeks, and then come back and watch it a little more intently, thinking about you and what's going on with your as a leader, or what's going on as an employee, what's going on with your leader, and just look at it and pull out some points you think might be helpful for you. And thirdly, I normally add chapters to these. So if you find yourself engaged in a difficult discussion or a communication problem or a trust problem that you're trying to resolve, and you're going to go about doing it, you're going to see here in a minute, I'm recommending you plan those kinds of messages out before you get involved in the communication. And sometimes it helps to go back and look at something. So you can go back to a particular podcast, look at a chapter and find something that's relative. Go back and watch it. It may kick a few ideas into your mind, and you may be able to use those to more effectively accomplish what you need to accomplish. So that's pretty much it. Building trust through effective communication. Let's see what that's about.
And my first job was on an assembly line for a large manufacturing plant.
Let's back that up. There we
Hi,
go.
I am.
First, I want to tell you, I have to make sure I'm not the world's greatest technical person here. I know a lot about leadership, not a lot about podcasting. Uh, uh, I want you to understand that to help you try to get a grasp on what you think interpersonal communication is about, I'm going to use uh, uh, a conversation between two people. This actually transpired, but I kind of cloaked the names and the circumstances to kind of cover the privacy of the client. Uh, but it, it we're going to look at this as a way of looking at everything that happens. I think people think they understand how to communicate effectively, uh, but a lot of times they don't. They have this sense of feeling about being able to, because since they were 2 years old, they could listen and they could talk. And so, for 30, 28, 30 years, however old you are, you've been doing that. So you must be a good communicator. You must be pretty good at it. I mean, the problem is yeah, you probably are good at talking and listening, but you may not be good at communicating because I'm seeing a lot of things going wrong in this world that probably the core root cause of these problems is an interperson not understanding interpersonal communication and how to use it effectively. So uh, we're going to use these basic discussion to see what actually happens when two people are communicating. I think you might be surprised at how complex and difficult it is. Um, so this is going to be Carmen, who has a problem. She's director of operations for a manufacturing plant, and she's got a problem with the international director of marketing. So we'll take a look at this and use that as a tool to kind of guide us through understanding what this thing interpersonal communication really is about. All right, I think we can go now.
Hi, I am a 40-year-old Caucasian female who grew up in an upper Midwest small town. I graduated from high school, and my first job was on an assembly line for a large manufacturing plant in the United States. I have been with the same company for over 18 years. From the assembly position, I worked my way up to lead assembly worker. Then I was promoted to supervisor, manager, and then to director of operations for the company. I served as our union rep for 10 years. I am married with 3 grown children, and I am equal income provider for my family along with my husband. I need to call Ali, our international marketing manager, and discuss a problem with his marketing plan he submitted for our operations vice president. Ali is a Middle Eastern man, with very traditional values and doesn't care much for women's opinions. He lives in Saudi Arabia, but was received his MBA from Harvard. I need to call him today and discuss his marketing plan.
Okay, so here we have Carmen's problem. There's a couple of things about Carmen. I picked this picture on purpose because I thought it was interesting. There may be people who are watching this podcast who have virtually no idea what that black thing is on the table that she's holding, that thing in her hand and listening through it. That is called a telephone, and it was the precursor to your smartphone, which Ali is holding over there against his ear. And also on her desk is a typewriter. In case you don't know what that is, I'll let you go back and look that up in WikiLeaks. That's how, but you'll see this is kind of interesting because it does make a point about the interpersonal communication. So what's going on here with Carmen? Carmen's got this problem, and she needs to communicate with Ali about what she thinks ought to happen to make that to get that problem resolved. And so she has to have a discussion. And so one of the first things that she's going to do, and some people just do this off the top of their head sometimes, they just pick up the phone and call and they start the conversation thinking, well, I've got the problem defined. You know, he needs to change his marketing plan. Uh, and when she is creating what she is going to say, she brings her values, her belief systems, and everything about her, her history with the company, her, you know, who she is as a person, her family, everything about her is engaged in identifying and creating messages that she sends to different people about different topics. In this case, it's going to be to Ali about marketing. So keep this in mind. There's a lot impacting your communication before you utter a word or communicate in any form to somebody. You've got a culture behind you that is creating how you probably will formulate your message. So, what we're going to do is we're going to see she has a message. She thinks she knows what she wants to say to Ali. And so the question is, how is she going to do this? There's a lot of ways to do this today. She can get on an airplane and go over there. And she's chosen simply to make a phone call to Ali to provide the introduction to this problem and then see where it goes from there. So here's what's going on.
Ali, Carmen here. Hope your day went well today. I am calling to discuss changing your marketing strategy for the operations unit. It looks great for delivering overall sales and profits to the company, but it puts more work on the operation team and increases our cost as a department. I thought we could get together and make some changes to the operations marketing strategy.
So what we have here is two channels, the verbal, which is what she's saying over the phone, and normally there would be a nonverbal communication, which would be her body, you know, her facial features, bodies, eye contact, those normal things that most people think about when they think about nonverbal communication. But there are a lot more. There are a lot more things involved in nonverbal communication. So the question is, given what she told you about herself and what she told you about Ali and what the problem was, How do you think Ollie's going to hear that message and receive it? And so just take a second. If anybody's on here, you can throw up a chat message or something to kind of indicate to me what you think that might be, how Ollie might react to that at this point. So since this is one of those sessions where I just kind of am doing it off the cuff to get it into the library area for people to look at. Nobody's responding to this yet. If you are on watching this on YouTube, it'd be nice for you to just leave a short chat of where you're located, etc., whatever. Let me know you're on there. That would be helpful. But right now, the question becomes: do you even now remember what she said to Ollie and how she said it? And the chances are you probably don't. So I'm going to replay it for you for a second.
Lee, Carmen here. Hope your day went well today. I am calling to discuss changing your marketing strategy for the operations unit. It looks great for delivering overall sales and profits to the company, but it puts more work on the operation team and increases our cost as a department. I thought we could get together and make some changes to the operations marketing strategy.
Okay, so what you have, he's hearing her message, and what he is hearing is, I need to change the marketing strategy, and it is causing trouble and more operating problems for her. But I presented it, and the executives accepted it, and they like the idea that it's going to generate more revenue. And so I'm hearing she wants me to change this. Carmen, what you know about Carmen is that she worked her way up the chain of leadership into the position she has. She's been with the company for 15 years. Ollie's probably been with the company, say, 5 years. She has a high school education. He has a master's degree from Harvard in marketing. And she is pretty knowledgeable about the whole operating realm, what it's going to take to achieve their success in operations. What is missing here and is vital is there is no nonverbal communication. He can't see her. All he is hearing is the words she is saying. And he is attaching a meaning initially as a male in Saudi Arabia, having a female tell him that he needs to change his marketing plan. It's wrong. Two things culturally that might impact that message right off the bat is the fact that there's an imbalance in education and there's an imbalance between cultural perceptions of females' role in the business world. So those two things may play a significant role in her ability to get Ollie to even think about changing his marketing, let alone telling him he needs to change it right out. So he's hearing her message, but he's interpreting it with his value system. So he could say something along. I mean, he's going to try to respond to her, and so he's going to create a message. He's going to use his value systems to create that message. And then when he creates that message, it goes back the same way that she communicated, primarily verbal, no nonverbal communication, and she's going to receive what he says. And it may come across something like, I understand this might be a little more difficult on you, but it's going to deliver significant amounts of dollars to the corporation. And that's extremely important with what's going on right now. I appreciate your concern, but this is really something you need to work out with your department. And there's not much I can do to help you do that. But I don't think I want to change the marketing plan that I've offered that's been accepted. And it's over. That's it. Bang. Push the button. We're disconnected. The verbal, you have no sense of what he looks like, how his feelings, what his emotions are about from a nonverbal perspective. If you were in the same room, it'd be awful hard to walk away from that conversation like that. But it'd be pretty simple to do it in this particular situation. So Carmen's in a little bit of a dilemma here. Uh, so uh, she pretty much presented this as kind of what she had to say and how she would approach him. And so one of the things we needed to consider, what are the kinds of things that can get in the way? What are the things that are missing here that we could use to correct maybe the interpersonal communication, make it more impactful, more influential? And obviously, you probably already thought of this. We could scrub everything off her table, just push it off the table, including the phone, everything. And we could give her a laptop with a phone built in that she can connect, and her and Ollie could talk with each other and see each other. So we could improve the nonverbal communication immediately with that change. But there's some other things that are in the way here. Uh, and so normally in most messages there are some barriers, and there's internal barriers and external barriers. So let's look at these. Aren't all of the barriers, but they'll cover the main key barriers. There's cultural barriers, language, laws, values, belief systems, history, tradition. And there's a big difference between the view of women in business in Saudi Arabia and the male population there, particularly if they're heavily involved in their religion, and females. So the idea that a female would start a conversation by saying, we need to consider changing your marketing plan you've already presented, it's been accepted by executives because it's going to impact my operations department, probably is going to come across somewhat the wrong way. So that's a cultural variance. But then we also have the educational variance. He has a master's degree, she has a high school education. She has 15 years of experience, he has 5 years experience. So the question becomes competency, capability levels. He also has a title. We'll get into that in a minute here. But educationally, there is a big difference in their educational gap, and I'm certain he most likely will perceive given the tone of this conversation, why is this woman calling me, telling me I need to change? She needs to take care of her own problem. Can she not handle that? So that's exactly how he could respond. Now, it could be that there is a bias. I mean, if she happens to have a particular culture that has a bias against um, um, two things in this personal area, one could be race. In other words, just the fact that he's from a country that degrades women or doesn't degrade them, but certainly puts them in a subservient position. So there's a gender bias there. It could be an age differential. She may think she's wiser, has more experience. He may be thinking she's locked into this system, and she can't think outside of her existing role. Uh, and religion could be one thing. If he's a Muslim and he feels women are subservient and that's part of the way women should behave, that's not who she is. She worked her way up the organization. She's an equal partner with with her husband, and so these are some of the personal things that can get in the way. There are some psychological things could get in the way. A person could have a personality. They may have personal stability, or a lack of personal stability is an issue. Are they, somebody who is comfortable with themselves, their self esteem is high, that kind of thing, or and maybe they may have relationships problems or life events scenarios. They had a bad day or something like that, all the way up to mental health problems like somebody may be ADHD and not even know it, and their behavior is perceived as non-team oriented, or they they're perceived as not belonging to the group, not sensitive to other people. And ADHD people have that as a problem. It is, in many cases, a genetic and biological problem more than it is a mental problem in some cases. And consequently, bosses don't understand this, don't know how to relate to that. In some cases, this can be severe enough to where lights and noises and lots of people and too much communication, it becomes actually physically painful with headaches and things like that. So, you have all of these things here that are potential barriers that are right stuck in the middle of getting in the way of Carmen's conversation here. But there's also external barriers. Some of those are environmental. Uh, Weather, natural disasters, pandemics, terrain, geographical locations, things like that. Environmental issues that can be difficult and may interrupt the conversations in some ways. You have organizational things like structure, petition, policies, um, laws, rules, size of the organization, roles, accountability, budgets, uh, political issues, even training and development can be impacting in some ways or not. Uh, Vision, missions, strategies, and how they're written, and the culture they're creating, those kinds of things can be part of. In this case, the idea that the role of the marketing vice president carries a vice presidential position, which has to do with uh, the the structural side of things too, which we'll get to in a second. But the idea that you have somebody in operations telling you, you know, you need to change your marketing plan. That's most of the time in most organizations, given the paradigm we operate on today, those are difficult things to deal with from a communication perspective. They can get in the way. You also have hardware, software, resource availability, cost, innovations, adverse impact on technology, all kinds of things technically that can get in the way. Do you have the right equipment? Is it the right process? How do you get people trained to use this equipment and software correctly? Then you have societal issues like, uh, you know, um, tribalism, community involvement, power struggles, financial inequity, tribalism. All of those things are things that get in the way of communicating effectively. They can get in the way of communicating effectively. So you have most of these environmental things are, the external barriers we don't have much control over. We do have a little more control over how we communicate and can alter the impact of some of these internal barriers. Um, the and we can't control which software the company buys, and we can't control the culture from the top that's being pushed down in a lot of cases. So these are things you need to understand are impacting Carmen's message. And when we sit down and talked about these and walked through these things, she came up with a different solution. Uh, she decided to maybe create a different message that she wanted to send to Ollie this time. she didn't send the first message. She really didn't make that contact. This one she did. And so she sent it the same way, verbally. Ollie, I need your help in trying to implement your marketing strategy so we can meet your goals. Ah, that's a different approach, a different tact. She's taken some things into consideration. The male female gender issue. She's taken in the educational variance, and this time she's going to try to use that to get Ali to help design these particular uh, whatever is necessary to help ensure to relieve the pressure off her operations group, as well as hit his marketing goals, which is much more appealing to him because he is engaged in helping her and her mind. She still gets exactly what she wants out of this. He's a different perception about his role and the process. And you have two people trying to help each other solve a problem as opposed to a vice president and a director trying to define what needs to be done in their individual departments. So that was something that I was pretty excited about her after she came back with this process. But she asked for one other thing, and that's this stuff. She got all that stuff off her desk, and she did this via a video conferencing session, and it came off really well. And they came up with a solution that took the pressure off the operations department and shared some of the financial rewards with the operations team if they exceeded the objectives. So those are the kinds of things that came back. Now, initially, what happened was, of course, she involved nonverbal communication and verbal now. He began to hear the message differently. It aligned with who he was and his thought process. So he recognized the problem. He also recognized that it impacted his potential for achieving his goals. So when he sent that message back, he was using those thought processes and values to create his message, which was, well, what are the issues? Let's see if I can help. That's a big difference from the first proposed session with the most likely response from him without more information. And so this all happened the same way, only we had an increase in nonverbal communication both directions. Both the message plus the feedback was coming back positive, which meant we had the only thing we had to do now was create a meeting where we could discuss all of this in detail. So the answer was yes, I'm going to help you. And let's get together and talk about this sometime where we can spend time and we can get face to face and deal with this. And then so that's how she received his message, which is of course the same feedback process, but she was listening more intently for what he says. So her response, I didn't put on here, but it was basically along the lines, I appreciate your help so much. Now, so there you have an idea of the complexity of just two people talking to each other and the dynamics of barriers and how you can plan your message by controlling the barriers that could impact you, understanding those barriers and understanding the person who you want to send the message to and spending the time, a little extra time to recouch your message so that it comes across effectively to the other person. And that other person is what she was doing is basically living the axiom of the meaning of the message is in the mind of the receiver. Always in the mind of the receiver. If you keep that in mind and you create your message so that they want to hear it and can align it with their values and goals and systems, as opposed to you trying to send it the way you would like to send it. You're sending it the way that they will receive it, understand it, and adhere in a positive way towards it. So most people don't do that in the world today. They simply pick up the phone and start. And what happens is you get into a debate on, and it turns into an argument. It gets referred to both her boss and his boss are the same, so it gets referred to the boss. So we're up at that level, trying to resolve a conflict, as opposed to creating the solution that she now is able to create with Ali, not even engaging the other leader involved in the process, and the solution will come out fine. And if it's Ali going back and adjusting his program, that's fine. If it involves her adjusting her program, that's fine. They have the solution. Maybe it's a combination of both of those things that end up being better for both parties, in which case, that's exactly what happened here. Now, that's a simple process. That's a simple communication, a simple discussion, just two people. This is what communication is turned into today. These are all areas that people focus and specialize in and actually get degrees in some cases, advanced degrees, masters and PhDs in some of these areas. This is all the kinds of communication that's out there. And they kind of all interact. The interpersonal communication is probably the base concept of communication in general. It impacts organizational communication. It impacts all of these communications. But all of them have a specific need. Organizational communication is how you structure an organization and provide communication within the structure of that organization to achieve your objectives. It's interpersonal in nature, but it's focused specifically on how you structure that organization, how you establish the roles and those kinds of things in the organization. But then there's mass communication where people are providing information in large quantities out there in the world, and that information may be accurate. I mean, what we're experiencing with mass communication, particularly in the news arenas now, is they're less factual and more opinionated. And so people are frustrated with the mass community. They're getting a tremendous amount of communication, and they have networks on cable networks fighting with each other about the same message being presented two different ways. But people out there have access to both of those ways, and they're being inundated with a tremendous amount of information. And it begins to create silos and divisions in the world when it comes that way. And that's the same is true with political communication. Uh, you have advertising relations, marketing, consumer behavior has a lot to do with how to convince you to do something. There's a thin line between the ethics and morals of marketing and unduly influencing people, or the common term would be brainwashing people, but it's probably better couched in unduly influencing people, because I'm not sure you can wash the brain. So these are all critical pieces of specialties in communication that people are creating out there for everybody to participate in. The good news when it comes down to leadership, that's usually between you and your employee or employees, and that's normally not a mass media issue. That's normally a leadership one on one or one on a few issue. And it could be relevant to organizational communication. That's my undergraduate degrees in interpersonal communication. My master's and much of the work I did in doctoral on my doctoral program before I had to leave it because of travel and work and family. Uh, Pretty close to being done, about 15 hours away, but uh, probably not going to do me a lot of good now. But the organizational side was the other side of the communication. So there are things where like small group communication, interpersonal communication kind of relate to, but the general gist of the communication is this: uh, narrow it down, thin it out. Uh, um, you know, it's kind of like I've spent a lot of years collecting stuff. In my senior years, got rid of most of my stuff, and I've kind of trimmed down my lifestyle to fit very simple. I've simplified a lot of things. So, personally, you want to stay focused on the leadership side on your interpersonal communication concepts first and not get drug up into a lot of as a leader, into a lot of the organizational stuff that's out there because most likely it's not going to impact you as much as your interpersonal communication will. So, a couple of takeaways from the communication side of this. The meaning of the message resides in the mind of the receiver. Feedback is the breakfast of champions when it comes to communication. Now, the most important tool in your communication toolbox, active listening. So, feedback and active listening are things you see taught a lot out there in leadership development. But I'm telling you right now, probably 95, maybe even 80% of the communication you do and the thousands of communications you have during the day are not active listening necessary. Some of them won't even require feedback. Uh, the feedback is important for you to balance things off to ensure your messages are getting through. Active listening is a much more intense and comprehensive listening that usually is, it's things you want to, active listening is something you want to do when there's some significant consequence to whatever you're communicating about. Other than that, don't get too tied up in it, or you're going to get burned out faster than you thought. Plan your important or difficult messages before initiating your communication. I can't emphasize this enough. The whole idea that we turned around Carmen's situation by simply having a basic discussion and educating her about this interpersonal concepts that I'm sharing with you now ended up in her repositioning her message and actually getting a little more. She didn't anticipate her people getting rewarded for anything that they may have to do extra to get that marketing up where they needed it to be. So that was something that was actually extremely beneficial scenario for her. So communication is the vehicle. It's the tool, the vehicle, if you will, for building trust. So, do you have any questions right now? Is there anything out there that you feel you would like to talk about or ask a question about in this realm if you're listening? I'm going to take a second and check, and if somebody's listening, that's fine. We'll put it up here. They can log on and sort of jump in here and do it. If not, we're going to move on because you can watch this later and you can, like I said, use those comments, use my YouTube community to comment and make recommendations about what we need to have further podcast on, and also to tell me those stories about that relate to you about what we've covered so far on communication. Okay, let's jump back in. So we've talked about communication. We know that element of it. But what about trust? What is trust about? What is this thing? How do you build trust? What is trust even about? Well, I looked up a definition that I felt probably said it as good. And I think this came out of the Oxford Dictionary. Um, and this actually is a pretty good definition. And if you see this in your mind, it'll tell you a lot about what you need to do to build trust, whether it's with leadership or with anybody, in fact. So, trust is a firm belief. I mean, you really got to believe this is true. And the reliability that I can count on this. This is consistently the same, and I know I can count on it. Truth, it is real. It is what it is about. It's not a facade. It's not misinformation. It's not propaganda. It is truth. And the truth comes from those facts and those behaviors that are right in front of my eyes that I can see and understand. And then ability, that's competence. You trust in something that will get the job done or someone who has the capacity and skill sets to do what needs to be done. And from that, all of those comes this sense of strength. I can it's reliable, it's truthful, it's competent. So I know they're strong and it's you can see the strength in them. You, and you can see all this in someone or something. So internal trust can be self-confidence. This has nothing to do with anybody you're leading. This has to do with you. It's one of the key things we have missed for 4 friggin' decades. We have been spent no time in most development courses I've ever seen, and most people I've talked to that are leaders. We have spent no time helping them understand themselves, understand who they are, how they think, what they can do to train themselves to think differently, to understand themselves well enough to be able to feel comfortable about their strength, their abilities, their competence, their reliability. We have spent no time doing that with leaders before we put them in position. So many leaders I've talked to over the years, 40 years, when you talk to them, you ask them, so how did you feel when you were put in your position? And they're going, I wasn't never ready. I'm just not ready now. And I wasn't ready when they put me in the position. And that is a significant thing. That is the one thing that's the other area that the Renaissance leadership odyssey paradigm shift change process that I've designed focuses on the psychology, the psychological profile of the leader, who they are. If they're going to learn about empathy, what do they know about themselves in empathy that they can bring to bear so when they show it, it comes across as real and sincere and is right message reflecting who they are so that the employees can believe it. It shows as sincere. If you just teach empathy without knowing this aspect about yourself, you may try to apply it and it comes across as insincere and fake. That's why a lot of times people will take things they learn and they will go out here and they'll try to apply them and it doesn't work because they haven't had this personal development and it comes across as fake and sincere. The employees don't react positive to it, so they quit it. And that's why basically Gallup was showing, maybe it wasn't Gallup, it was another research study I showed that they were showing the amount of people who said they actually learned something, where it actually had some contribution to the company or the organization, and where there was some impact, positive impact, change on the workforce that they led. And it was like under 30% of the people said they learned anything new. That means 70% of the people who attended didn't. Under 30, less, even less than that, somewhere close to 25% of the people said they basically had no impact on the organization. And less than 20% of the people said they had some sort of impact on positive impact on their employee workforce. That means 80% of the people who attend these courses have really had no impact on the base reason they attend the course, and that's to improve the behavior change in those people who they lead. So self-confidence is something you need to grasp. But I bring this up because this is a really key difference between my leadership paradigm and what most people are offering out there on quick short courses of leadership development. The change has to be an intervention into the organization, and it's a long-term change. It's not it's an intervention. It is a change process. It is not a training program. It constitutes education in psychology, sociology, and interpersonal communication. And those courses are the interpersonal communication leadership course, the positive intelligence course, Shurjad Shamin's course, the Daniel Goleman emotional intelligence program. All of those are 6 week, 7 week, or 12-week programs, and they all are extended further out into the change of the organization. So this is an intervention process, not a quick come to my seminar and I will give you the 5 quick key steps that'll get you to be an effective leader. Never seen those things work ever on a leader. What I have seen is time spent with leadership on an ongoing basis over time, where you're there to help them counterbalance, kind of like I was there with Carmen, to be able to counterbalance a thought process, not to tell them what to do, to help them become self discovering in nature, so that they're always growing within themselves. And then never to take credit for them becoming better. It's always them who becomes better. So there's this internal trust that you and the external trust comes from either something that has physical strength, like or someone that you trust, that you really feel is grounded and well set up to help take care of yourself. So there's internal trust and there's external trust. And I would say until you're fairly comfortable with trusting yourself and internally self confident in yourself, you've got some work to do in that developmental area before you're going to want to start working through the building trust between you and your workforce. Or you can do that simultaneously, but you certainly don't want to leap into helping your employees build their trust if you lack some of this internal trust, this self confidence in yourself. So what that tells you is there's one undeniable fact: trust is given; it can't be demanded. Now, you can force somebody by threatening with their job, and they would be in the street. If they lost their job, you can force them to say, "I trust you." I mean, you can even have them sign a document to that effect. "I trust you," but they've signed it under duress. You don't know if they really trust you or not. You really don't know that. I don't care if they signed a paper saying they trusted you. That's not how you determine whether trust is established. Trust has to be earned and not commanded. So it can't be demanded and it can't be commanded. Now, when it comes to trust and power, Power, a lot of people think if you have a if you're a vice president, if you're a leadership role, you have the power, somebody comes to work for you, they should trust in you. The fact is, it works the other way around. People aren't trusting of you until they know and see that trust demonstrated, in which case, then they can empower you to lead them. And so it will always be contingent upon the leadership to establish that trust. Power does not equal trust. Trust can easily equal power. That's how you are absolutely sure you've gained some trust from your people when they empower you to lead them. And you have to figure out what that looks like with you. But when you see it, it is a marvelous thing to experience. Um, it's one of those things where I had a leader that really used a lot of gruff, and they were perceived as tough-minded and demanding. And I went in and said, well, maybe we'll relieve the leadership here based on the data and everything. But somehow your data shows that you don't want your leader relieved or taken out of position. They said, no, absolutely not. I said, but you say that, he talks to you gruff, he, his language is probably not appropriate all the time. And he's kind of directive, forceful at times. Yeah, he is, but he is consistent. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, we pretty much can predict him. If something happens, we predict on how he's going to react. We actually can get it done before he can tell us to do it. Oh my gosh. But, that it can't be fun to work for this guy. It's not fun, but we're not, I don't get my fun from him. I get it at home. What I get from him is I learn a lot, and I'm growing in this job a lot. And by the way, when one of us is sick at home, he sends a meal to us. So there you go. There's a gruff guy that's compassionate. And there's a group of people who, if you tried to take this leader out of their vicinity and give that leader something else to do, they're going to be in the middle of you. They don't want that. They want you to leave this guy alone. They're fine. So there's an example where they feel the strength in this person, the reliability, the consistency, the competency in them. They feel the strength in this person, and they're growing because of that. So there's an example of relative to power and trust. But I have actually two podcasts, two, I think, hour and a half podcasts each on power and its impact on trust. One of them has Dr. Brian Grossman, who was on the show with me, was talking about how positive intelligence and can help you impact and find yourself as a leader and provide that strength and that image of self-confidence that employees like to see in leadership. So we talked about that a whole lot, and we also talked to another guest, and Brian Dosaki, who we talked about power and how leaders, the combination of power bases that leaders use to exact the most trust from their employees and the highest performance. And that was, I think, back in December. Um, podcast on that and power and trust. So there's some other podcasts you can go look at in addition to this that reinforces kind of what I say here. So how does this trust thing work? How do we make that work? Well, uh, trust is about mm, balance. It's really about balance. And so let me kind of help you understand that. First of all, I'd like to show you um, a thermometer. I'd like to talk to you about your body a minute. Your body operates at its optimum. Your organs, everything going on inside your body, your feelings, your emotions, your thought processes, everything operate optimally when your temperature is 98.6, which is most of the time, hopefully. However, if you get a virus, you get sick or something, your temperature goes up 104, 105, you become almost dysfunctional because your body is shutting down to fight whatever's going on. And you just don't feel like doing anything. Same is true as if you got hyperthermia, you were freezing to death. You're inoperable. You can't think straight. Everything is not working properly. But that 98.6 temperature, right in there, um, where that yellow phase is on this thermometer, if you happen to be watching this versus listening to it. But that 98.6 is a set point, is a regulatory point that sort of says things are cool, we're okay, we're on the right track. So trust has a regulatory point, and it has a factor that regulates it, and it's really harm. How much can one person do more harm to another person? And the impact is when that is unbalanced, that person who can do more harm to the other person than they can do harm back, that other person's trust begins to subside and disappear. So let me try and explain this on a teeter totter scale. I like this picture. Um, you have two girls that met on a playground. They're having fun together. They really like each other. They're playing. They've swung. They've had cokes and snacks and everything. They're really enjoying something. Got on the teeter totter, and they both had their feet on the ground, and they both were equal. And the girl in blue says, "I'll start." And so she pushes down, and the other girl goes up in the air, and it's exciting. She's having fun, and she's enjoying and giggling, and they're talking and everything. And then the little girl in the yellow shirt says to the little girl in blue shirt, "Hey, let me down. I'll do this with you." And the little girl in the blue shirt smiles at her and goes, "No, I'm not letting you down." And the little girl goes, "Ah, come on, let me down. I'll do it with you." And she goes, "No, I'm not letting you down." And all of a sudden, the little girl in yellow's smile turns to just a stone face. She goes, "No, really, let me down. I want to get down." She goes, "No, I don't want to let you down." And the little girl starts getting a little excited. What's happened here? The little girl in blue has the ability to control and potentially harm the other girl in her mind. She could fall off. She could feel like she's stuck up there forever until somebody wants to let her down or come help her let her down. And so what's happened is finally the girl in blue lets her down and she puts the girl in blue up and the girl in blue up says, "Okay, let me back down." And then she lets the girl back down, but then she's hesitant. She's not sure the girl in blue is going to let her back down when she gets her up. Even though she kind of thinks she will, there's still that hesitancy in the back of her mind to trust her fully. And so that's an unbalanced situation when one person has a perceived power impact over another one to the point where it leaves them wondering about what that person might be using against you down the road as opposed to using for you. And so, if you think about that in the capacity of an equal scales thing. The one on the right, the leader has all of the power. Not all of it, but a vast majority of the power. They can do much more harm to the employee than the employee can do to the leader. That's the perception that leader wants those employees to have, because he wants them to be controlled, to do what they say when they say it happens. It could be a her too. I've seen both of them just as bad. Uh, Whereas if you balance that out, if you find ways for the employee to feel like they're as valued as the leader is, that there's an sort of an equal valuation in terms of what the company needs to be successful, they need both the leader and the employee equally. Then all of a sudden you can start talking about sharing things and how to make things happen together. And the employees can then feel comfortable and empowering the leader to go forward and lead them where they're going, knowing that he has their welfare in mind, not their harm, their welfare. He doesn't want to control them, he wants to help them be successful and to get the things that they want out of being employed with the company. As long as they're helping the company achieve their objective, he is in line with that. And so, how do you get that balance? What are some of the things that leaders use to do that? Well, Warren Bennis uh, covered this in his book in Leaders, and so I give him credit for what I'm about to share with you. I may have changed the words a little bit to align with the communication philosophy that I've attached to this, but they're basically the same definitions and principles that Warren was saying, that these are things that leaders need to be embracing in their leadership role. And these are also things that you need to ask yourself about yourself before you start trying to apply them. Uh, and that leadership psychological uh, profile, that leadership profile that it tells you who you are. One of those is competence. Research has shown that employees associate leadership power with knowledge and approachability. Now, what French and Raven meant by approachability is the ability to interface in an open, transparent, consistent manner frequently enough to feel like you are connected. So when you have an when you feel uh, that you have competence, knowledge, uh, basically related to competence. That you and it goes back to that same thing, ability in the definition of trust. When you have the ability and you show that ability and that confidence, and you're approachable and your people interface with you well enough to know who you are and can relate to you, and this one piece, they see competence. They see you as the go to person for help. They see you as an educator to get them where they want to go. They see you as a defender of them when they need assistance and help. All of those kinds of things are wrapped up in the competence of a leader. Consistency. This is I already talked about this with the leader before. Consistency was this leader who talked gruff, but his employees didn't want to get rid of him. Consistency was the primary thing that was driving them being able to live with this guy and in fact enjoy working for him, because he was consistent, he was predictable, he people could count on and knew what he was thinking, to the point where they could actually do things without him even having to ask. And then he would come around and say, I was going to ask you to do this. And they would say, yeah, we knew it. So we just did it. So that's empowering your employees. And the employees are also empowering the leader to go about doing his business and not have to worry about them. So consistency means doing that the commitments you make are there, that employees are treated the same. There's an equality. All employees feel this way, which means you have to interface and connect and interact interpersonally with all of your employees, not just one, not just a few, not just the supervisors or the crew leaders, all the way down through the ranks. Compassion. This is something where, again, you want to make sure you really understand this about yourself so that when you apply it, it comes across sincere. Comes across in the manner that you would apply compassion, not somebody else. Uh, Compassion indicates to the employee a sense of concern and caring, and the leader shows compassion towards the employee. It makes the employee feel valued and wanted and a member of the team. Now, lack of empathy or compassion by the leader can indicate a sense of not being respected. You can even feel used as an employee. Leaders can often express this compassion through tough love. I explained that earlier. Leaders are often perceived as compassionate and caring by providing employees with the critique and the nudging that they need when they're performing well. So this idea of you can't tell somebody what's wrong. You can tell people, employees want this. They want this. And leaders need to feel it necessary for them to do this. It's how you do that with compassion, with consistency, with competence, and with congruity. In other words, you are who you say you are, and it's easily you understand this person is who they are, and that's the way they are. They may be gruff, they may not use the right words, but they're compassionate, they care about you. Those that's congruity. That's congruity. That's where you are who you say you are. You are real, so to speak. Um, and that shows strength, and that's what employees want out of leaders. There are far more employees than there are leaders, and so there vast majority of people want leaders to lead them. They just want them to lead them correctly. They want to sense this balance of trust and harm, and that each people, it's not so much they were worried about harm, they want to be as valued as the leader is, and if they are, then they're prepared to follow that leader, and that's his role. Theirs is different. So here's some key takeaways. By now you should realize effective communication is the vehicle you use to implement the 4 C's that build trust. um, there you can you can't demand leadership power or trust. You gotta, this is something that's granted to you by employees, and you get that by effectively building your interpersonal communication skills, because that's the methodology whereby employees recognize compassion, competence, congruity, and consistency in leaders. Uh, and you have to sense this. I mean, you have to frequently interact with your employees all of them on an ongoing basis for you to get the feedback you need. And where things are off or miss and you need change and may make some significant consequences, you need to engage your active listening skills that you were trained to do, and actually become effective at using those. So, now, there's here we go again. Is there a point where you may have some sort of questions or anything, if anybody's out there, that you would like to ask about trust and compassion, or the 4 C's, and how harm is the regulator of trust, and the need for internal and external trust, anything like that that you would like to ask questions about, please put in the comments section so we can um, respond to you and help you become more educated in this. I want to thank you for watching this, taking the time. I know it's been somewhat long podcast, but every time you attend something like this, it helps. What really also helps is pretty much what I said. I am uh, open to you providing some comments to us. I am most particularly looking forward to you sharing some stories about how maybe communication and trust has helped you in some way. And maybe point out some of these areas when you're describing it in your story. That kind of comments are useful for other people, not just me, but for other people. That's the primary purpose for those comments. I've been in this for 45 years. Although I can learn on it, it's rare that I run across something that is different than what I'm altering or asking you to consider here. So these comments, a lot of comments, if you can put them in stories, things that you've experienced, either negative or not. Now, like I say when I do the chats, protect yourself. You know, don't list names, don't list your name or your leader's name or your company or even the industry it's in. Just describe the situation. You can do that by being neutral in terms of referring to a leader, referring to a person. So I hope this has been beneficial to you. If it has, please do that. Please uh, comment in there. Go visit, and again, subscribe to me because if you subscribe, that helps me, and you know, click the notification so you can catch all these things when they come around, like I'm doing now. So sometimes I do them quickly, and you may just check on me and find out I'm live, and come visit. Come say something. In some cases, if what you think is important enough, put in the comments you want to talk to me about coming on the air with me, and we can maybe share some experiences with some of these podcasts that I've done, whether it's positive intelligence or whether it's harmony or whether it's power or whether it's about trust and communication. Uh, we can talk about some of the things how they've worked in your life and how they're working. You can be a leader, you can be an employee, you can be a CEO, you can be a consultant, you can be whatever you want to be. I'm interested in your stories. I'm interested in anything that we can show people that helps them understand how to be more effective and later in the future. So I'm Victor Vogel. This is Renaissance Leadership Odyssey podcast. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you find it helpful. Please let me know. And until next time, I'll see you later.